I don't just talk about other people's stuff, I also make my own. Books in particular. To date, I have 4 books you can check out on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Kaiju Wars Part 1, Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and the short story collection Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Hop on down to the description for Amazon links to all 4 books. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video. Looks like people are debating whether or not the humans matter in Godzilla movies again. Oh, that old debate. You know, the only way this argument will ever be settled is for someone to just make the movie and see what happens. Maybe, Snazzy, maybe. Though it occurs to me we already have a kaiju movie that didn't need humans in it, and they probably could have been omitted entirely. You mean Godzilla vs. Kong? Sure, the humans were secondary at best, but they still had to be there for certain plot points to happen. No, actually, I'm not talking about that one. In fact, I'm not talking about anything from the MonsterVerse. What I'm referring to is Godzilla vs. Mothra, known stateside as Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth. Well, that sounds like an introduction if ever I heard one. May as well do a video on it, and the cameras are already running. Yes, Godzilla vs. Mothra, the Heisei version, not the Showa version, is a kaiju movie in which the human cast is completely unnecessary. They don't really contribute anything of value to the film, and when it seems like they do, it ultimately amounts to nothing. Can you prove it? Well, that's why I'm here, Snazzy. Let's all go through the plot together, shall we? The plot is set in motion right away by a literal act of God. A meteor just happens to smash into the Pacific, which directly causes the 3 major events that will drive the plot forward. First, it wakes up Godzilla, who was hibernating after his battle with Mecha King Ghidorah. Second, it uncovers Mothra's egg, which was previously buried on Infant Island. Third and final, it releases Batra, who makes his way to the Japanese mainland. All of this happens without any human interference. Humans are there to observe it, but they do not directly cause any of it. Hang on a minute. I think you're glossing over something. Like what? While it is true that the humans aren't directly involved in any of the stuff you described, that doesn't mean they aren't indirectly involved. The movie says outright that the disasters are all happening at once because of mankind wrecking the environment. Through pollution and deforestation, humanity was setting itself up for disaster. The meteorite may have been a freak occurrence, but it wouldn't have had any dominoes to knock down if humanity hadn't set them up first. It's a little heavy-handed, sure, but doesn't this fly in the face of your argument? How can you say the human characters don't matter when you have this fact contradicting you? I suppose that's a fair point, so I'll amend. In a general sense, we are meant to come away from Godzilla vs. Mothra believing that humanity has had a negative impact on the environment and needs to change its ways going forward. However, that element of the plot paints humanity in very broad strokes, presenting us more as an amalgamated presence. Moreover, that negative impact was already in place well before the plot begins in earnest. Even the one individual responsible for most of the environmental exploitation, and we'll explore him a bit later, was already doing so before the film starts. Lest I be accused of splitting hairs, let us accept that humanity, in a very general sense, set things up so the plot could happen. But when we look at how things progress from there, we will see that the human characters we follow throughout this film don't contribute anything of value. Case in point, our 3 de facto leads, rebellious archaeologist Takuya Fujita, fellow archaeologist and his ex-wife Masako Tezuka, and Maritomo Company employee Kenji Ando. When we first meet Takuya, he's raiding an Indian temple in a scene that primarily exists to be an Indiana Jones reference. Sure, it explains why he's in jail at the start, but apart from that and being a reference, it never really pays off. It's not like he discovers some ancient reliefs that foreshadow the movie's events or anything. He just steals a statuette of Ganesh, destroys the temple on his way out, is instantly caught by the authorities, and then he's in jail. The only important detail of this whole introduction is that he's in jail. Nothing else matters. They let Tetsuya out of jail so the government can send him, Masako, and Ando to Infant Island. The only explanation we get is that the Maritomo Company has a deal with the government to exploit resources on the island, which they've already been doing, so it's in the company's and the government's best interest to see how the meteor strike affected that project.
The only way these three going to the island pays off is that this is how we meet the Cosmos.
Quick question, do the Cosmos count as part of the human cast?
I'm going to say no because they're not technically human. Rather, they are supernatural beings with a direct link to Mothra.
This direct link allows them to explain the backstory about Mothra and Batra to our trio. Batra, meanwhile, is already trashing Nagoya, and the military is about as effective at stopping him as you would expect.
Question again, does the Army's ineffectiveness count as humans not contributing to the plot? I mean, that happens in plenty of other Godzilla movies.
I think it should still count. There are examples in other Godzilla movies where the JSDF is able to at least somewhat contain or redirect the monsters, but they come across as especially impotent in this film. I mean, I don't even think they give Batra so much as a light bruise.
Anyway, while Batra is actually doing something of consequence, the team on Infant Island only think they are. Ando convinces both the Cosmos and his boss, Takashi Tomakane, that it would be a great idea to bring Mothra's egg to mainland Japan.
Both parties agree with him, but for different reasons.
The Cosmos believe the egg will be safer on the mainland, while Tomakane believes it will make a great tourist attraction he can charge people to see. And so a ship is sent over, surprisingly fast all things considered, to cart the egg away.
But just when it seems like the humans might do something that actually affects the plot, the real stars intervene.
Godzilla spontaneously appears to intercept Mothra's egg, and as if in response, Mothra hatches. While Takuya does manage to release the barge that was carrying the egg, that doesn't have any greater effect beyond letting the ship retreat a bit faster.
Frankly, Godzilla and Mothra could care less about the boat.
Hey, you misspoke. You mean they couldn't care less.
No, I mean they could care less, because they do wind up caring less once Batra enters the fray.
Batra draws Godzilla's attention, and the battle continues underwater. Here, another act of God occurs as the ground just suddenly opens and swallows them both up. While all of that happens, Mothra swims back to Infant Island, so it's basically like she never left in the first place.
The human characters almost did something that moved the plot forward, but then the Kaiju intervened and it was all for nothing. As such, the boat can only sail back to the mainland with our main trio and the Cosmos on board.
Aha! You just said they brought the Cosmos with them. That contributes to the plot, because if they hadn't brought the Cosmos back to Japan, Mothra would never have caused any destruction when she comes to save them.
You're technically not wrong, Snazzy, but I think this is more on the Cosmos than it is on the humans.
How do you figure that?
Well, this is jumping ahead a bit, but let's briefly go to the end of the film.
When Mothra and the Cosmos depart, the Cosmos display the ability to fly. You see they levitate into the air and land on Mothra.
Presumably they always had that ability, so I can't think of one reason for them not to jump ship and head back to Infant Island while they're still so close to it.
Even if you argue that maybe they can only fly short distances or only fly so long as Mothra is the landing point, Mothra's not that far away. They probably could have made it, but for some reason they stay on the ship, which allows them to get kidnapped by Ando as a consolation prize for losing the egg.
If they have a reason to go to Japan, it's never really clarified. But even if they do have a reason, it's still their choice.
As such, no matter how much this movie wants me to believe that Ando and Tomakane are the ones at fault, the death and destruction Mothra causes from here on out falls squarely on the Cosmos' tiny shoulders.
Speaking of Tomakane, he's clearly framed as the human antagonist of this film. The man in charge of a big evil corporation that's stripping the planet of its resources without any care for how it might affect the environment long term. Personally, though, I think his villainy is perhaps a bit overplayed.
Don't get me wrong, he's still causing environmental destruction, but regarding Mothra and the Cosmos, he's not directly responsible for any of that stuff. Ando is the guy who wanted to bring the egg to Japan, and he's the one who kidnaps the Cosmos after that plan goes belly up.
Mind you, Tomakane is not blameless here. He could have said no to either of those ideas, but he only saw dollar signs. His motivation to make money causes him to be very short-sighted, which is a weird trait for a successful businessman, but set that aside for a moment. The fact of the matter is, if Ando hadn't taken the initiative in either proposing that they bring the egg over or in kidnapping the Cosmos, Tomakane's worst crime would have been stripping the planet of resources without much thought for the future. And yes, that is very ignorant, but does it really qualify as evil? Like mustache-twirling, cackling evil? I suppose it depends on how you define evil, but personally, I'm hesitant to go that far. Yes, ignorant, but maybe not evil.
Yet by the end, all of the blame for these disasters is placed on Tomakane, while Ando gets to leave with his head held high because he's sorry, I guess?
I don't know, it just feels like there wasn't much thought put into this side of things. But then again, when you pen the script so the human characters literally don't matter, what else do you expect?
Anyway, a game of hot potato ensues in which the Cosmos are passed from Ando to Tomakane, then Takuya steals them hoping to pass them off to an American for $1 million, but they basically stay in the same general area, so once again, not much really happens of significance until Mothra shows up. She causes all kinds of carnage until the Cosmos tell her to stop, and then the military blasts her while she's leaving.
At first, it looks like the military might have actually hurt her, but this turns out to be a ruse.
What appears to be Mothra dying from wounds that were just inflicted is actually just the end of her larval stage. So the military, and humanity by extension, once again failed to do anything. As Mothra cocoons herself to undergo metamorphosis, Godzilla reappears. He apparently swam through the planet's mantle to Mount Fuji, where he emerges in a volcanic eruption. Once again, the military tries to divert Godzilla, and once again, they fail in spectacular fashion.
Like I said, the military is laughably weak in this movie. At this point, all the human characters can do is stand back and watch as the monsters converge.
Mothra emerges in her Imago form, and Batra reappears and transforms into his Imago form. From there, of course, we get the final battle, and we already know the humans aren't going to participate in that. And finally, the film ends with the revelation that Batra was originally going to stop another meteor from devastating Earth in 1999, but since he's dead now, Mothra is going to do it for him. And maybe accidentally create Space Godzilla on the way, depending on who you ask. Even though the movie still tells us that mankind must take better care of the Earth, we still end with a scenario in which mankind has no control, because only Mothra can stop the second meteor, which was apparently always going to hit Earth whether humanity cleaned up its act or not.
There you have it, folks. I would call that proof positive that the human cast in Godzilla vs. Mothra is a completely gratuitous element to the story. And you want to know what the craziest part is? People responded incredibly well to Godzilla vs. Mothra upon its initial release.
Before Shin Godzilla came along, Godzilla vs. Mothra was the highest grossing film in the series, beating out the former champ King Kong vs. Godzilla. Audiences turned out in droves to see it, even as it was being critiqued for its useless human cast and its subtle as a sledgehammer moralizing.
Granted, that was back in the early 90s, and trends have changed since then, but I think it still speaks to the idea that people go to kaiju movies for the monsters, because I guarantee nobody went to this movie for the people.
So what's your conclusion? Does this movie work or not?
Well, the monster parts definitely work, and maybe that's what we should be paying attention to.
We may spend a lot of time with the humans, but there's no denying that the kaiju are the most active participants in this film. For all intents and purposes, they move the story forward entirely on their own.
Everything that happens in Godzilla vs. Mothra happens despite the human characters, never because of them. So perhaps they were never needed in the first place.
With a little imagination, I'll bet this movie could have easily been made with little to no footage of the humans at all. Human influence could be shown entirely through visuals of vehicles and decimated landscapes, with maybe some crowd shots of people fleeing during city attacks. That would place the focus solely on following Mothra, Godzilla, and Batra as they act out their respective plot threads before inevitably colliding at the end. It would take some real skill to pull off, sure, but it could be done.
Ergo, Godzilla vs. Mothra could serve as a template for how a kaiju story without people in it could be told. Someone just has to commit to the idea and actually do it, and the result could be something unique.
Unique good or unique bad?
Well, that remains to be seen, Snazzy. But hopefully one day we will see it, and that will settle the matter. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Now bear in mind, folks, by saying all of this, I'm not saying that human characters don't belong in kaiju movies at all. Human characters do matter in these films, but we'll look into that another day.
Congratulations, you reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, the other way to support us is to go to Amazon and check out our books, Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Also check the description for links to DeviantArt and other platforms we operate. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.